Welcome in, everybody, to a special election edition of Coinage as we are digesting the headlines results across the country as a historic election wraps up not just President Trump's win to discuss today or Bitcoin's record all-time high, but digging into the congressional races, what they mean for Congress, what they mean for your crypto portfolio, what we're seeing move right now. And of course, we start as always with the Bitcoin chart. As I said, Bitcoin trading at an all-time high as President Donald Trump wins the election that was a toss-up. Right now, also want to highlight the odds that we are seeing play out in control of the House. This would be the race or the collection of races to watch when it comes to the last piece of that Republican red sweep. We already know that Republicans are taking back the Senate. The big question now is, will they also control the House? Huge implications when it comes to Donald Trump delivering on his campaign promises to make America not just great again, but also the crypto capital of the planet, as he had said on the campaign trail. Going to be a huge piece to see whether or not that actually comes to fruition, because we're all waiting to see who he's going to appoint to be the new SEC chair. Basically a foregone conclusion at this point that Gary Gensler is gone packing, but who will replace him as chair at the SEC? That's a big question still to be answered. Some people are saying Crypto Mom might be the play, Commissioner Hester Peirce. I'm not necessarily so sure that she actually wants that job based off of what you said, but we're going to dig into that a bit later on in the show. I want to play some reactions, though, that we've gotten before we dig into the specifics, because, as we said, some House races still need to be called. But clearly, if there is a takeaway, I just want to highlight this is also kind of what we've seen play out when it comes to Stand With Crypto tracking the races as they've gone to finals across the board. The main takeaway here is that if you're pro-crypto, it was a good night for you so far, leaning that way in the key races we've been watching. That's the takeaway from where we sit here as Coinage, the only community-owned crypto news outlet in the space, steered by our NFT holders. That's the main takeaway, and we're going to dig into why those races went that way in just a second, including a huge one, the most money ever spent for an election in the U.S. at the Senate level, or the state level, I should say. In Ohio, Bernie Moreno beating Sherrod Brown. That's the other big one. We're going to dig into that one in a sec as well, ladies and gents, because it's a huge, I'm going to call it an upset. I don't think it's too crazy to call this one an upset, just when you consider that Bernie Moreno basically came out of nowhere. Stand With Crypto and all the other crypto packs, fair shake, throwing huge amounts of money. Basically, $500 million flew into this race in Ohio. And what you have, the result is Sherrod Brown, who's held that seat since 2007, is no longer going to be there, no longer going to be the head of the Senate Banking Committee. You got Bernie Moreno coming in out of nowhere. Perry Ann Boring, Digital Chamber, warned us that this was the race to watch and that it could happen. And look at what happened. It happened. I want to get reacts from none other than Mike Novogratz at Galaxy Digital. His reaction just a few hours ago on CNBC, talking about what this means, what it means for Trump specifically, in terms of how Trump might be able to deliver on those campaign promises, what we're going to see from Trump in his second go as president, what it means for crypto. Take a listen to what Mike Novogratz said just a few moments ago.
Listen, it was a great night for the crypto industry, right? And if you listen to your last guest, Donald Trump, that keeps his promises. If you go back to the speech he made at Nashville to the crypto community, his agenda is very pro-crypto. J.D. Vance is pro-crypto, Peter Thiel, Howard Lutnick, Kennedy. He surrounded himself by people that believe in the industry, care about the industry. I mean, the crypto community showed up, right? There are now over 240 congressmen who, the crypto pack thought were pro-crypto. And so we've got a Congress that is moving our way. We've got a president that's moving our way. And so for Galaxy, for the crypto industry, I couldn't be more optimistic.
So couldn't be more optimistic for crypto now under Trump. And I think one of the key reasons as to why is a couple different reasons. One, we've obviously seen under the last administration for the last 4 years, basically crypto get decimated by an anti-crypto SEC. And of course, we're not only going to see who might replace Gary Gensler as chair at the SEC, we're also still, as I said, waiting to see whether or not we are going to have a red sweep, which is Republicans taking control of the House. Right now, it is looking like that is most likely. And we're still waiting to see how some of those races shake out. But I want to highlight that because from one of the guys who's been dead right as far as analysts go, we've had him on the show multiple times, Sean Farrell. He's been dead right all year. He's got a $115,000 price target for Bitcoin to wrap up the year. This is key and crucial, folks, because if Republicans take control of the House, there's essentially nothing stopping Republicans from getting some of those things done, including a Bitcoin strategic asset reserve. And that's the quote from Sean Farrell here, saying a red sweep would immediately dismantle the anti-crypto regulatory apparatus and force investors to adjust their modeled probability of the U.S. adopting Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset upwards from zero. Reason why it would be zero is because that if Democrats had control of the House, unlikely that it would even get there for a vote, let alone across the finish line. And I'm not saying that it's going to get across the finish line, nor is Sean Farrell, but certainly updating it from a 0% chance to something that is non-zero. We're going to see how these races shake out because that's going to dictate what the House looks like. But certainly not zero anymore that we could potentially see what Senator Lummis had tried to push through. And all of the campaign promises we've heard from Donald Trump speaking at Bitcoin Nashville that he wants to actually pursue a strategic reserve. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I am saying certainly, as we heard from Sean Farrell, that you need to adjust upward, that it's not going to be zero anymore. And along those lines, we are right now watching huge inflows, huge volumes when it comes to the Bitcoin ETFs. I want to highlight the Bloomberg boys calling out what we are potentially going to see. And as we titled this space, where does Bitcoin's price go from here? As we said, Sean Farrell's got a $115,000 price target on the year-end price of Bitcoin. Still a long way to go. I'm going to say personally, this is me going out on a limb in an election hat, going out on a limb and saying that, look, we are seeing some violent reaction. We were expecting to see this. Travis Kling came on the show about 2 weeks ago, saying that we would see $80,000 for Bitcoin immediately following the election if Trump were to win. We're basically seeing that play out. New all-time high at 75,000. You know, there's going to be some shakiness. What I want to highlight, though, is what happens next in terms of the inflows we are about to see. And again, shout out to Eric Balchunas from Bloomberg, digging into what we're seeing right now in today's session on IBIT, BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, $1 billion in volume in the first 20 minutes of trading. That's about what it normally does in a full day. I raise this because normally when you see crazy volumes like that, even despite the fact that volumes are coming as price goes up, it's getting more expensive for people to buy Bitcoins through these ETFs. Put that aside, you've got basically what we're doing normally in a day. His other point, last time we saw such a huge volume spike, it was the trigger that began the huge run-up in inflows. So essentially saying, look, this pattern generally is pointing towards a flow-a-thon that's about to happen, because last time we saw this, that's exactly what happened, and you had Bitcoin go to all-time highs. We're barely touching, scraping, tapping all-time highs right now as we're at 75K. So I'm raising that because if you listen to all the smart people we've had on the show, and do I put myself in that camp? You can put myself in that camp if you want to. You can say, yeah, Zach, you're also smart and you're wearing an election hat. But I'm not going to give myself that credit. I'm just going to say, look at what Travis Kling said. He said 80. We're not there yet. Look at what Sean Farrell said. He said 115. We're nowhere close to that yet. What I'm saying is the market's got to digest these results. We got to see what happens in the House. But even if you don't have Republican control in the House, you're already seeing huge volumes on the Bitcoin ETFs. And I really do think we're just getting started here. I also want to play some of the reacts and some of the confidence we're seeing from other market watchers as well. Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary was on Fox News as the results were trickling in. And part of the reason why I'm saying we're not anywhere close is because we're only starting the cycle. I don't need to explain this to anybody who's been in the space for a very long time, but the idea is price moves beget more price moves. A beginning of the discussion triggers more of the discussion. I say this as someone who's covered it from the financial news space for a very long time. It basically is the spark that begins a raging fire, and we are barely at someone tapping rocks together right now. And here's what Kevin O'Leary said on Fox News last night as the results were trickling in. Here's what he said about Bitcoin.
By the way, as the markets, the Polymarket and all these election markets were moving, Bitcoin went up exponentially.
Yes, I'm long Bitcoin.
Are you?
That's just one conversation. There's going to be like 15 of them this week. We already saw Pomp go on, and of course, we already saw Mike Novogratz on CNBC this morning, and I do not think that trend is going to stop as price moves higher. Look, I'm not going to say it's only up right now, but that seems to be what is beginning here, folks. And as I said, the storyline, the narrative is going to continue, especially when we think about what comes next, who's going to be installed in these positions. I want to highlight what we heard from Mike Novogratz, aside from the fact that, Donald Trump, if he delivers on all of his campaign promises, is going to continue to push Bitcoin's price higher. He also weighed in on who we might see play out, who might be Donald Trump's pick for SEC chair. Again, as I said off the top, I'm not entirely sure that we're going to see crypto mom Hester Peirce be the person, because every time she's come on Coinage, she's basically said, I'm not so sure I want that job. And I tend to believe her when she says it. She's never lied to us. We'll see. We'll see what happens, and we will let you know if we hear any updates from her office. But I do think it might be more likely that we do see a name that was floated before, one that Mike Novogratz brought up too, which is Robinhood's chief legal officer. That name had been floated a few weeks ago, that he could be the pick for SEC chair. Here's what Mike Novogratz said this morning.
The chief legal officer at Robinhood has been thrown in. I'm not sure the exact person matters as long as they're very open-minded to this industry. And I think there's just no way Trump's not going to pick someone who, listen, right. He's launched his own coin. And so, his family is engaged, he's engaged. And so I just think it's hard to you got to wake up and slap yourself in the face. We have gone 4 years of a very, very difficult regulatory environment, and that's all about to change.
It's true. We have gone 4 years in a very, very difficult regulatory environment. We've gone 4 years of congressmen and women believing the lies that have been pushed by Senator Elizabeth Warren and co. in terms of trying to shut this industry down. And we've seen banks who interacted with the industry kneecapped from even doing any sort of business with some of the most respected companies in the space. And so what happens when all of a sudden that all goes away? I think that's what people are just starting to wake up to. And of course, I will also say, even if we do see a red sweep, I'm not sure that there's not some risks worth talking about. Okay, I know a lot of people in crypto are celebrating this morning. I'm not going to rain on the parade, but I will. I'm going to come out and say there might be some things that we need to discuss as an industry. Mainly, what's going to happen with stablecoins? What's going to happen with Howard Lutnick, transition chair, co-chair right now for Team Trump? The guy at Cantor Fitzgerald is basically custodying $80 billion worth of treasuries from Tether. Stablecoin legislation is going to be one of the first things that we talk about under this new administration if it doesn't happen in a lame duck session right now. And if you got Howard Lutnick steering the ship, potentially making a shit ton of money under Tether, I don't know what those rules are going to look like, but I do think you just had Donald Trump with World Liberty Financial basically get his coin off the ground in a way that was only institutional investors, and a token that doesn't allow you to trade it. It doesn't really look like the crypto that a lot of people who are in crypto want. I'm just saying that they're, even though they've won, I think there's still a lot of questions that the industry needs to answer under this administration, what it's going to look like. I'm optimistic, obviously much more optimistic, that will get answered in the right way under a Trump administration for crypto than it might under another 4 years of Democratic leadership led by Gary Gensler and Elizabeth Warren. But I'm just saying, until we know, let's just keep the pressure on Washington, D.C., is what I'm saying. I also want to highlight again the way that some of these races trickled out. And again, we have not seen anything called quite yet in terms of that last piece of Republican sweep. This is the New York Times right now in their map, looking at the races in the House. You still have quite a bit to call there in terms of who's going to control the House. I don't need to belabor the point into why that's so important when it comes to some of the policies and legislation that might get pushed through when it comes to what President Trump wants to do with Bitcoin, when it comes to the strategic reserve asset status that we are going to potentially see play out there. But if you look at the odds, those have not necessarily, actually, they've gotten worse for Democrats potentially putting up any sort of a challenge there for House control. This morning it was about 6%, I think, is what Polymarket was giving the Democrats to maybe potentially take control of the House. That's in half now, 3%, and trending lower. So again, seems like the red sweep may be complete here. And I do want to, again, just highlight everyone in the industry, mostly Brian Armstrong, mostly Coinbase, which, by the way, the stock right now, I believe, is up 20%. So a huge day for Coinbase. Their bet is definitely paying off. But one of the biggest bets they made was on the Ohio race in Bernie Moreno and ousting Sherrod Brown, basically the number 2 underneath Elizabeth Warren on the Senate Banking Committee, who had executed Choke Point 2.0 to cut off all banking access for crypto companies. He was essentially public enemy number 1 in the Senate, and they spent a shit ton of money. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, $500 million flowed into that race, as I said, to take down Sherrod Brown. Did they? Yes. Who? Bernie Moreno is the man who took him down. And here's what he had to say when it comes to him now stepping into that spot and what he brings to the table in terms of Republicans now running the show in the Senate.
We got rid of Chuck Schumer tonight, but pretty soon we're going to get rid of another couple people that need to be gone.
Who those people are? TBD. We're still watching those races play out. But one thing is very clear. Republicans now control the Senate, and very soon, potentially, it seems like will control the House as well. Who's going to step up in those leadership positions? TBD. Bernie Moreno didn't really want to answer who he's going to throw his support behind. But it's clearly going to be a Republican who's running the show when it comes to those things. And potentially going to be Tim Scott, by the way. You could have Tim Scott running the show in a key position. And I just want to highlight the idea of Tim Scott now potentially shifting to be one of the most pro-Bitcoin senators, up there with Senator Lummis on stage at the Bitcoin conference. It was basically a rumble fest. You could witness in real time. Bitcoin Senator Cynthia Lummis, that's what she calls herself. Tim Scott challenging her for that title. I mean, it was wild. I don't know if we have that clip of Tim Scott just going ham on stage at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. But this is the man who potentially could be leading things in the Senate, folks.
Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty. It's free at last.
That's Tim Scott basically saying that Bitcoin is freeing us at last. And when you put all those things together, you got potentially, I don't want to say it's going to, I mean, no one knows who it's going to be. But as far as leading things, Tim Scott in a leadership position, things are very, very pro-Bitcoin. And I do not think, I will say this again, as we look back at the chart here in terms of where Bitcoin's at, I do not think a lot of this is baked into Bitcoin being at 75K. Some people might say, oh, wow, we hit all-time highs. That's cool. We'll probably hang here for a little bit. I do not think that that is the case. And it's not just my word. It's what we've heard from Sean Farrell. It's what we've heard from Travis Kling. I'm just saying. Take a look at what else is happening and how much farther we have to go. These are some of the other cryptocurrencies we're watching today. I want to bring up the chart for SUI because that's another one that we've seen continually pushed higher when it comes to being a leading altcoin. I think right now, any crypto investor out there probably needs to say who's showing strength on a day like today. You got SUI up 11.7%. And the big question is how much of this is going to be Bitcoin-led or how much of it's going to be altcoin-led? And I think that's just one chart to look at. But outside of that, there are plenty of other potential movers here. The question is, at what point does the pendulum swing beyond just Bitcoin? And that, to me, is the big thing. Under a Democrat, I actually thought Bitcoin's dominance would have a longer way to go because so many questions beyond Bitcoin exist in terms of what that might look like. But now that you have a red sweep, I would suspect Bitcoin's dominance to not last as long. So we, as an industry, are going to be taking a closer look at some of those altcoins. We as a show are going to be taking a closer look at those altcoins. If you're watching this right now, by the way, and have suggestions as to which ones are most likely to lead, reply and throw a comment in because we're looking at projects we should be highlighting here as Coinage's crypto project of the year. And if there is one big takeaway from this, if there is one big winner, it's not just the industry itself for throwing a bunch of money into the Congress or into these races, But it's also Polymarket, because the main takeaway from all of this is that basically Polymarket called a lot of this. And I'm not saying Polymarket called it, but the market, the idea that people could put money. A lot of people were saying, hey, that's not actually what's going to happen. They basically nailed what was going to happen. And so we do want to give some love to Polymarket. And we had Rob Haddock on yesterday, or on Monday, talking about Polymarket potentially being a leader for Coinage's Crypto Project of the Year in terms of nominations. If you want to nominate a project, you can tell us right now. Throw a comment on this. Let us know which projects we should be taking a look at. But here's what Rob had to say about Polymarket. When you think about $3 billion wagered on these races and more than 100x in terms of monthly active users from last election cycle, the last time we did this, it's hard to say that Polymarket hasn't crushed and probably shouldn't win this. But here's what he said. Here's his endorsement on Polymarket.
There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the biggest impact on the entire crypto ecosystem this year has come from Polymarket. And I'll preface this with we're an investor, but if you look at just the way they've pervaded the national psyche around this election, I think it's unmatched in what has ever happened in consumer products and crypto. They're doing over $1 billion of volume last month. They have over 220,000 active traders. They're over 400 million of open interest right now. Like, that is a platform, and what Shane Kaplan has done there in terms of just their integrations and their partnerships with all of the major media providers, all of the major data providers. I don't think there is anything that you could point to that has done more to bring crypto into the mainstream.
And I don't know if he's wrong. That's the thing. I mean, it's not just Polymarket, but we've seen a lot of these prediction markets pop up, run on crypto rails. And you got to also think, there were legal questions about whether or not elections should be included in this. That's still an ongoing ruling. We'll have to wait and see whether or not those prediction markets are fair. Obviously, right now, technically, if you're in the U.S., you're not supposed to be betting on Polymarket. They're supposed to block you. Unclear exactly how good they were at that. And some of the other sites got stays of execution in those rulings until a final ruling, so people could bet on those. And so I guess, there is some truth to that. Polymarket certainly would be a leader in this, but I am calling on our community before we get to the votes that will be coming up. We'll have the bracket. We'll have everything there. We just need to know which teams we should include in the bracket. So open nominations have begun for Coinage's Crypto Project of the Year. You tell us. It's the only community-nominated and awarded trophy in the crypto space, is what we're calling it. And as always, per last year, the opportunity for you guys to fill out a bracket and win as well, along with us and these projects, as we bring the founders on to discuss what they have planned for next year. Look, I think we're going to close with this. It was a very interesting election cycle. It was a very, shall we say, stressful time for a lot of people. At the same time, there was a lot riding on this election for this industry, for crypto, for people who trade crypto, for people who want to see a better future using the technology we all believe in. I want to be optimistic in terms of not only where this industry goes, but where use cases and understanding of this technology goes. I think we are seeing the early cracks of sunshine in terms of what could happen here as Bitcoin hits an all-time high. I want to stress, and again, this is not financial advice, I want to stress, we haven't even seen the race called for control in the House, and whether or not President Donald Trump can deliver on some of those promises that he made on the campaign trail, as we're seeing from some of the smartest people we've had on this show who have $115,000 price targets for Bitcoin. They're saying, you got to adjust your models. We've stressed it on this show. Please, for the love of God, if you have friends who haven't thought about it, who haven't really been orange-pilled, tell them about Coinage. Tell them about our coverage. Tell them about the guests we have on and the messages we try to deliver to the people. And if you want to co-own it with us, again, it is not too late. Head to Coinage.media to catch the biggest headlines in crypto and to own the only community-owned outlet, along with the co-founder of Netflix, along with the founders of some of the top projects in Web3. We're doing something here, folks. And if you haven't yet, stake with us at Coinage.media as well. You're powering, again, the only community-owned DAO media outlet in the space. living Web3 values. And I thank you all for tuning in again. Congratulations for making it through this election cycle. If you voted, shout out to you as well. America's a DAO if you really think about it, and you did your part. Thank you again for listening, everybody. And as always, you can head to Coinage.media to learn more about us and to catch the biggest stories in crypto. For everybody here at Coinage, I'm Zach Guzman, signing off. We'll see you again soon.